Hi everybody, this is Joel Kennedy with Kennedy Violins. So today is another play-along video, and we are going through the Seitz Concerto No. 2 third movement from the Suzuki Book 4 series. So if you guys remember, every week I do a play-along, and the dartboard of destiny back there determines what piece we're going to work on every week. So at the end of this video, I'm going to be throwing the dart to find out what song we're doing for next week. And there's a big variety, right? Because last week I was doing Suzuki Book 1, right? So now we're into Book 4. It's all over the place. Okay, so let's get to it. Okay, so this is a pretty long and complicated concerto. In fact, it's probably the most complicated concerto in all of Suzuki Book 4, actually. So I could spend a lot of time talking about this. I'm gonna try to leave out stuff that's not completely necessary and just talk about a couple of the most important aspects of this concerto that people have a difficult time with. So with that, let's go ahead and play the first half of this concerto. Okay, so that's that. So like I mentioned before, there's a lot to talk about in this piece. I'm mostly going to focus on articulation and rhythm and a couple practice techniques to make this piece a little bit easier for you. So with this first section, let's first talk about the articulation. So remember, in every Suzuki song, they're trying to teach you a particular technique, a foundational technique that'll help you with everything that you do on the violin. So in this one, they're teaching you how to pick up your bow and catch it. It's almost like a prelude to spiccato in a way. So in the beginning, we have this articulation. So you lift the bow, catch it, catch it. So leave enough bow here. Again. So most of this is going to occur in the middle to the lower part of the bow for the proper articulation and the easiest way to play this. So you need to always know where you are in the bow, and wherever you are in the bow, you're there because it's very intentionally so, right? You have determined that I need to be in this part of the bow, right? So in the beginning, we want to make sure that we lift, but we still have enough bow left for our up bow. So we still have enough bow. Again, we still have enough bow. Okay, so there's that articulation. Now, we have our usual up-ups, right? Which, of course, to do those well, you have to make sure you stop your bow. So, for example, in the last measure of the second line, right, we have those. So to get those nice and sticky, we want to make sure we stop our bow. Good. Let's talk about those double stops really quick. So you'll want to play these double stops in the lower part of the bow. And then, as usual, when you have a double stop, like the fourth measure of the third line, that is 3 notes. We always want to break them 2 and 2. So open, open, open 1. So you practice it, right? And then we have, and whenever you have fingered notes on a lower string with an open string up above, it's always the same deal. In order to be successful at this, make sure you trim your nails, for one, and always make sure your fingers are upright, right? Your fingers are upright. If they're laying down, your fingers on the fingered note are going to touch the open string. We don't want that, right? So stand your fingers up so it doesn't touch. And you just play on the tips of your fingers, right? Make sure you move that elbow over, right? Move it over to the right to make sure those fingers are at the right angle. Okay, and then of course, when you practice this section, always practice it with no slurs first. So, then put the slur in. Okay, that's how you practice that section. Okay, so now let's talk about the rhythm. Now it's going to take a little bit of time for me to explain the best way that I think you should practice the rhythm, but this will apply to other sections in the piece, so no harm done. Okay, so let's talk about the rhythm a little bit. Okay, so first of all, you're in 6/8. Now this may be somewhat new to you, especially if you're in a Suzuki series where you're usually doing 2/4 cut time, 4/4, you know, something like that, 3/4, right? But we're doing it 6/8. So normally that would mean, okay, the eighth note gets the beat and you're 6/8 notes in a measure. Well, that's true. There is the equivalent of 6/8 notes in a measure, but when you play 6/8, you don't count it in 6, right? You count it in 2. So you have 2 groupings of 3/8 notes, right? So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if I was to sing this and clap it in 2, it'd be da-dee, da-da-da-da. Da 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 dee da da da. Okay. But when we practice it, if we're not able to know how long some of these notes are, we have to practice it a specific way. So let's talk about that. So the way that you'll want to practice this is, number 1, practice it in 6. So you're going to slow it down and you're going to count out your 8th notes in some of your tied notes that are a little bit weird, right? So, for example, the second line first measure, you have a dotted quarter tied to a quarter note. So the easiest way to deal with ties always is to take the tie out in your mind, right? So you're just looking at 2 separate notes. So how many eighth notes are in a dotted quarter? 3. How many eighth notes are in a quarter? 2. So what you could do is you could write it out. If this doesn't come really quickly to you, what you could do is just write it out. Just write like 3 little dots above it, and then 2 little dots, or like put little faint slashes with your pencil, and you can erase them later. But this is just so you can learn how long do I hold out this tied note. So if you're practicing it in 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So altogether, that dotted note, the dotted quarter and the tied note, the dotted quarter and the quarter note, right? Altogether, that's 5 eighth notes. So you're going to count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? So find any tie in here and just write it in. The second tie occurs in the last measure of the second line. Okay? That one's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. 3 eighth notes for the dotted quarter and 1 eighth note for the 1 eighth note, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So you want to make sure, so I suggest just writing that in. So if you practice it slowly in 6, you can count those out. So what the first step that you want to do is be able to clap this in 6 and sing it. Okay, it doesn't matter if you're a great singer, you can sing in tune, it doesn't make any difference. You can just go da 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 da, it doesn't matter, it doesn't make any difference. But make sure you can clap it and you can sing it. Now, if you're not a very well trained seal, fine, put the metronome on and sing it, okay? But here's the rule. If you can't clap it and sing it, or you can't sing it with the metronome, then you cannot play it with the violin. The violin is only going to make it harder. So that's your first step. So from the beginning, bum ba bum ba bum bum ba da ba dun da 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 da dum bum 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 ba dum ba dum ba da 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 1, 2, 3, 4 bum 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 ba dum bum. Hopefully you wrote this in. 1, 2, 3, 4 bum 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 bum. Okay? So that's step number 1. Once you're able to clap and sing this through in 6, then you're ready for the violin. This is step number 2. So step number 2, get your metronome out. If you don't have a metronome, then I guess you'll just have to rely on your toe or something, but you should have a metronome. Okay, So I'm going to put the metronome on like 170, okay? Okay. Now you can sing it with the metronome as well if you want to do an intermediary step. Otherwise, just try playing it. One, two, three, four, five. One, two, three, four. One, two, three, four. And so on and so forth. So that's how you deal with any value of note that you have, or you're not exactly sure how to count it. Be able to play this in 6. Okay, I just put the metronome at 170. Perhaps you could speed it up so you can play it at 180. Okay, so now that you are playing everything rhythmically correct in 6 and you're very comfortable with it, now the last step is to put the metronome in 2, right? So now let's say if our metronome was at 180, okay, well now we're going to put the metronome down by like, you know, like a third or something like that, okay? So now let's put the metronome at like 60, okay? Okay, so now that you have the metronome at 60, now without your violin, you're going to sing it with the metronome or clap it with the metronome, right? So you can clap with the metronome too, right? Ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-bum. Ba-da-bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-da-da. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, da-dum. Right? So you're still counting those tied notes out, but you're clapping and singing it with the metronome. Ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba, bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, da. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, da-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum. Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-da-da-dee-da-da. 1, 2, 3, 4, bum, bum, bum. Bum, ba-da-da. 1, 2, 3, 4, bum, 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 and so on and so forth, okay? So that was at 60. Then, if we want, we could speed it up. So once you're confident and you're consistent, okay, now we can add the violin. Okay, so that's how, and then you just build up the speed as you go. But that's how I recommend that you learn these rhythms correctly and you're very consistent. Just do it, put it in 6, clap it, then play it, then put it in 2, clap it, then play it. It's basically 4 big steps. Okay, so let's talk about the next section. Okay, so there's that. Okay, so I'm not going to go over the rhythm a ton with this one because you're going to practice the rhythm with this one exactly the same way as you did the first one. The biggest rhythm that everybody messes up, right, is that first tied rhythm, right? So 4th line from the bottom, 2nd measure in, that 4th finger, right? So that's the one that most people, count wrong. But remember, it's just 2 eighth notes. That's all it is. So when you're beating your eighth notes, bum bum ba, 1 2 da da da, right? Bum bum bum. That quarter note's worth 2 eighths, and then that 4th finger is worth 2 eighths. Doesn't look like it, but it is. It's just tied. So take the tie out and just see 2 eighths. Da da 1 2 1 2 da 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 dee da da dum. Right? Same thing with the last measure of the 3rd line from the bottom. same deal. Ba da 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 da, right? So once you've got it down in 6, da 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 dee da 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 dee da 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 da, right? Now we switch it in 2, same steps as before. It's basically 4 steps. Bum bum ba da dee da da dee da da da, right? That's it. Okay, we have to move on. But let's talk about the articulation a little bit. So this one is what is it? Yeah, espressivo e tranquillo. So obviously a completely different. So the first one's like da dum ba ba dee dum, right? We're just kind of dancing and having a good time. The second part, it's like totally different scene, right? Maybe you're on a boat and it's beautiful and the boat's kind of rocking around and it's a beautiful day, or maybe you're telling a friend kind of somewhat of a traumatic story, right? So it's a completely different personality, maybe even a different person that's talking right now. But we mostly want to use full bows whenever we can, right? So... especially here, then a little bit quieter. To the frog. To the frog. Now double forte. Right? So a lot of big bows, everything's connected, long notes, right? And any kind of staccato that's in there, it's like in the string, you know. So that's pretty much for the articulation for that. So let's talk about the second part. Okay, so that's pretty much it for that part. Now, obviously, it's twice as long, but it's just a repeat. So to save time, I'm just not going to play it. Okay, so there's just a couple things that I want to mention with this. A lot of people have trouble with putting all these notes in one bow. It just seems like a lot, right? Okay, that's fine. But the way you want to practice it is no slurs, right? This is a common theme here, right? It's very common practice technique to just take out slurs. There's a lot of other ones that are in some of my other videos, but just remember this really easy one. So, right? Just. And then really pay attention to the high second finger, natural third finger in this figure. Make sure that second finger touches the third finger when that third finger goes down. Same thing with this second finger, except this second finger, make sure it's really low. Here comes that high second finger again. Okay, so that's a good practice technique. You want to practice it really slowly, put the metronome on, take the slurs out, then put the slurs in. Okay, let's talk about fingering really quickly. Okay, second line of this page, we have a sharp in there, right? So I suggest you use a high 1 for this. So we have, right? Why? Why not use low 2 to high 2 or something like that? Well, number 1, that's messy. But number 2, if you use a high 1, it just goes right underneath your high 2. You just played your high 2. So all you have to do is just make sure that high 1 is right under that 2. You can even look at it. Right? So that's what you should do on that one, in my opinion. Just play a high 1 on there, make sure it touches your high 2, and it'll probably be in tune. And now with the last measure of the second line, we have a sharp in there, right? So it's we have a sharp, all right? So can just play that, because A sharp is the same thing as B flat, right? So just play a low 1 to natural 1. Low 1. And that's about it, right? Not a big deal. Okay, so let's move on to the next part. Okay, so that's it for that part. Okay, so there's not nearly as much to talk about on this Brilliante section. The most important thing is that you want to be in pretty much the middle of the bow and using a very connected détaché stroke. Right, don't be here, right, just in the middle, and keep the bow in the string. So your dynamics go from a piano to a double forte, eventually in a risoluto, the double stroke, the double stops, right? So just start out slow, or start out quietly with your détaché. And then you're just going to be adding a little bit of weight and adding a little bit of speed to get that increase in dynamics. To the frog, right? So it's important that you prepare your bow for those double stops, and you're going to want to play those double stops in the frog. Right? And as usual with the 3-note chords, it's 2 and 2, then, right? Nothing big there. Okay, so let's talk about the very end, right? So it's going to start just like the beginning of the piece, but then we have a tenuto, the last measure of the 3rd line from the bottom, right? And then we're back to our Brilliante stroke. So that sounds like this. Okay, so that's that. So yeah, pretty simple. At the end we have our stroke that's very similar to the Brilliante, except it's about as heavy and as loud as we can possibly get it. And then make sure you're at the end for those double stops. You're at the frog for those double stops. Right? And of course there are 3-note chords, so we practice them same. We play them the same way we always do. 2 and 2. And then, yeah, so you get the idea, right? And then we want to wait a little bit, and then the biggest bow that we can for that last open G. Okay, so guys, long tutorial. I left a lot of stuff out, but I think I covered the most important things, the things that give people the most difficult time, when they're trying to practice it. This is probably at least 2 or maybe 3 45-minute lessons. Oh, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. I don't believe so. But anyways, if you like these play-alongs, I also do tutorials for like technique and stuff like that. Just like and subscribe because I do like 1 or 2 videos every week. So with that, let's find out what our piece is for next week with the Dart of Destiny. Okay, as usual, I have my preferred weapon, and we're going to throw at the dartboard to find out what we're doing next week. Okay, let's see if I don't harm any small animals. Okay, we are doing Book 1, Minuet 3. So that's Suzuki Book 1, number 3, Minuet 3. So, cool. All right, guys, that's about it for this week. As usual, if you have any questions or comments in the, about the piece or whatever, I answer most of the comments. Put them in the comments below, and I'll probably get right back to you. So I hope you guys have a good time practicing. This is a really cool piece. So have at it, and have a great day.